My ex cheated on me with her boss while I paid her bills, so I reported them both and left her reputation burned beyond repair. I'm a 26-year-old guy, and for 3 years I thought I was building the kind of relationship everyone dreams of. When my girlfriend moved in with me, she was struggling financially, barely scraping by with part-time jobs. I didn't hesitate. I told her, "Don't worry about it. I'll handle the bills until you're back on your feet." And I meant it. Rent, groceries, utilities, every last thing was on me. I believed I was investing in us, in our future. At first, I wore it like a badge of honor. I'd work late shifts, exhausted and running on coffee, just so she wouldn't have to stress about making ends meet. When I walked through the door after midnight, she'd be curled up on the couch with Netflix on, smiling at me like I was her hero. And in those moments, I believed it was worth it. But slowly, the small cracks started showing. She'd mention little things like, "My friends say, you spoil me too much," or, "You don't need to push yourself that hard, babe." But she never once tried to take on even a part of the load. Deep down, I told myself she was just focused on her career. I wanted to believe her hustle at her new job would eventually pay off for both of us. Still, there were nights when I'd collapse into bed, my body aching, and I'd wonder if she even noticed how much I was sacrificing. I'd glance at her, scrolling on her phone, laughing at some meme, and this quiet question would gnaw at me. Does she actually see me or just the bills I pay? That thought stuck with me longer than I wanted to admit. It wasn't long before little changes started creeping in, the kind you try to ignore at first, but can't shake off. She suddenly cared a lot more about how she looked before work, full face of makeup, expensive perfume, dresses she'd never worn when it was just the two of us. I told myself it was normal, that maybe she wanted to feel more professional, but every time she sprayed that perfume, the scent clung to the apartment long after she'd left, and it made me uneasy. One night, I asked gently, "Hey, you've been staying late a lot. Everything okay at work?" She rolled her eyes like I was being dramatic. "Relax. It's just work culture. My boss wants us putting in the extra effort. You wouldn't understand." Her words stung more than I wanted to admit. I was the one working myself raw just to keep us afloat. But somehow, I wouldn't understand what late nights were. I laughed it off, but inside, something felt off. I started noticing the excuses piling up. She'd come home at 10, 11, sometimes after midnight, claiming she was grinding for her future. When I asked if she wanted me to pick her up after work, she'd shut it down immediately. Don't waste the gas. Always too quick to rehearse. Even my friends started making comments. One of them said, "Bro, she's living like a queen while you're out here killing yourself. Be careful." I brushed it off, defensive, because the truth was I didn't want to face what I was starting to feel. But at night, when she turned her back to me in bed, scrolling on her phone, I couldn't stop the thought from clawing into me. What if I'm not the only one she's giving her attention to? That fear lingered in the dark, growing louder each night. The more I tried to ignore the signs, the louder they became. It wasn't just the late nights anymore, it was the way she talked about her boss. Suddenly, his name slipped into every other conversation. "He's such a visionary," she'd say. "He really believes in me." At first, I thought she was just excited about being noticed at work, but the tone in her voice was different. Too warm, too personal. I'd catch myself clenching my jaw whenever she brought him up. One night over dinner, I finally said, "You talk about this guy like he walks on water. What's so special about him?" She snapped back instantly. "Don't be insecure. Not every man in my life is competition." I wanted to believe her, but the pit in my stomach wouldn't let me. Then came the moment that shattered any illusions I had left. We were arguing one evening, something small, about dishes in the sink and, in the middle of her shouting, she slipped. She called me by her boss's name. For a second, the entire room froze. Her eyes widened, realizing what she'd said, and she scrambled to cover it up. "I'm tired. I didn't mean it. Don't overthink." But the damage was already done. I stood there, silent, my chest hollow, the sound of my own heartbeat roaring in my ears. I remember looking at her, really looking at her, and feeling like I didn't even know who was standing in front of me anymore that night. Lying awake next to her while she scrolled on her phone like nothing happened, I stared at the ceiling and thought, if she can't even keep his name out of her mouth during a fight, then how deep does this really go? And for the first time, I knew why I wasn't imagining things. The confirmation came on a night I'll never forget. She had gone to take a shower, leaving her phone on the couch. I don't usually snoop, but something in me, maybe survival, maybe desperation, pushed me to pick it up. My hands were trembling as I opened her messages, praying I'd find nothing. But the first thread I saw was his name. Her boss. I scrolled, and my stomach turned to stone. Messages like, "Last night was amazing. Can't wait for the next one. And you make me feel alive in ways he never could." My vision blurred as I kept scrolling, each word slicing deeper than the last. Screenshots of selfies, inside jokes, late-night rendezvous, all while I was breaking my back to keep her world spinning. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt like it was collapsing in on itself. She walked out of the bathroom, towel wrapped around her, and froze when she saw me holding her phone. "What the hell is this?" My voice cracked, half fury, half heartbreak. Her eyes darted to the screen, then back to me, and instead of breaking down or apologizing, she rolled her eyes. "You're overreacting. It's just flirting. You're so controlling." My world was crumbling, and she had the audacity to act like I was the problem. I wanted to scream, to throw her lies back in her face, but I couldn't move. My hands shook so badly, I nearly dropped the phone. She snatched it from me, muttering, "You're pathetic, snooping like this." That night, I didn't sleep. I lay there in the dark, listening to her breathe beside me, wondering how she could betray me so deeply and still sleep peacefully. And the worst part, a small, broken part of me still wanted to believe her. But I knew the truth now, and there was no unseeing it. After that night, everything shifted, but not the way I expected. I thought catching her red-handed would force honesty, maybe even a tearful confession. Instead, she doubled down. The next morning, over coffee, she leaned across the table and said, "If you keep accusing me of things, I'll just leave. I don't need this drama." Her words sliced me open. I had just seen undeniable proof, yet somehow she had me on the defensive. I found myself apologizing, saying, I love you. I don't want to lose you." Even as the words left my mouth, I hated myself for them. I hated how easily she twisted the knife and made me believe I was the problem. From then on, every conversation turned into a battlefield. If I asked where she was, she'd scoff. "Do you want to put a tracker on me too?" If I mentioned how tired I was from working double shifts, she'd smirk. "No one asked you to play hero." I stopped eating properly. My friends noticed the bags under my eyes, the way I zoned out mid-conversation. I'd lie and say, "Just stressed from work." But the truth was darker. Nights became torture. I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, listening to her texting in the dark, the soft buzz of her phone lighting up the room like a cruel reminder. There were moments I thought I was losing my mind. Maybe she was right, maybe I was insecure, maybe I was paranoid. I even caught myself rehearsing apologies for things I didn't do just to keep the peace. But deep down, the cracks in her lies were getting harder to ignore. And every time she turned her back on me in bed, it felt like she was turning her back on everything we'd built. I knew I couldn't keep living like this. The question was, what would finally break me? The breaking point came from someone I least expected, my best friend. He'd always been careful about commenting on my relationship. But one night, he showed up at my door with a look that told me everything before he even spoke. He handed me his phone, his hand trembling. "Man, you need to see this." On the screen were photos. My girlfriend, her boss, walking out of a hotel together, his arm around her waist, her hair messy, her laugh carefree in a way I hadn't seen in months. The timestamp mocked it was the same night. I'd been at work pulling an overnight shift to cover the bills. I swear my entire body went cold. My friend's voice felt far away as he said, "I didn't want to believe it either, but you deserve to know." I couldn't breathe. I sat down, clutching the phone like it was burning me. Every denial she'd thrown at me, every accusation that I was controlling or paranoid, all of it collapsed under the weight of those pictures. She wasn't just flirting. She wasn't just working late. She was with him. When she came home later, humming to herself like nothing had happened, I couldn't even look at her. My throat burned with words I couldn't say. She tossed her bag down and smiled. "What's for dinner?" As if my world hadn't just shattered that night. I realized the betrayal was deeper than I imagined it. Wasn't just cheating, it was the humiliation. Everyone but me seemed to see it. I was the fool funding her double life, and as I sat there in silence, one thought carved itself into my mind. If she can lie this easily, then I need to stop playing the victim. I need to play smarter. Rock bottom didn't hit me like a sudden crash. It crept up on me until one night, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had just finished a brutal overtime shift, my feet numb, my body aching, my hands smelling of grease and exhaustion. I climbed into my car and sat there in the dark parking lot, engine off, silence pressing against my chest, and that's when it hit me. Every extra hour, every drop of sweat, every aching muscle I wasn't building a future. I was just funding her affair. My hard-earned money was paying for the meals she shared with him, the gas for those late-night work sessions, maybe even the hotel room I saw in those photos. The thought hollowed me out until there was nothing left but shame. I gripped the steering wheel and tried to hold it together, but the tears came anyway. Deep, ugly sobs that shook my whole body. I hadn't cried like that since I was a kid. I kept asking myself, what am I doing? Why am I letting her destroy me like this? Part of me whispered the truth I didn't want to admit. I was scared. Scared of being alone. Scared that no one else would want me. Scared that all I'd have left, after all these sacrifices, was emptiness. For a moment, I even thought about staying, swallowing the lies, ignoring the betrayal, just so I wouldn't have to face that loneliness. But the pain inside me burned too hot. The humiliation of being nothing more than her financial safety net was unbearable. That night, staring at my own broken reflection in the rearview mirror, I realized something had to change. If I didn't act soon, this relationship would drain the very life out of me. And somewhere in that pain, a seed of resolve began to grow. That night in the car changed something in me. I walked into the apartment, saw her curled up on the couch with her phone lighting up her face, laughing at some text, and I felt nothing but cold clarity. The tears were gone. The begging, the pleading, all of it was gone. In its place was a quiet voice telling me, if you don't take control, you'll die in this prison she's built for you. So I made a choice. I wouldn't explode, I wouldn't scream, and I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me crumble again. Instead, I put on the mask. I smiled at her, kissed her forehead, asked about her day. She had no idea the man she thought she was destroying was already planning her downfall. Behind that mask, I started building my case. I collected everything: screenshots of her texts, the hotel photos my friend had sent me, copies of bank transfers showing my money covering her lifestyle. I even pulled receipts of gifts she had claimed were from work bonuses but were bought on my dime. Every piece of evidence went into hidden folders, backed up twice. Then I started digging deeper. I learned her company had a strict policy against relationships between supervisors and subordinates, not just frowned upon grounds for immediate termination. And the cherry on top, her boss was married, with kids. The kind of detail that doesn't just ruin a job, it ruins a reputation. At home, I perfected the act. I kept cooking dinner, asking about her day, even rubbing her shoulders when she came home late. She thought I was broken, tamed, too scared to leave, but I wasn't broken anymore. I was waiting, watching, collecting, and soon I'd have everything I needed to burn her lies to the ground. I didn't send anything in a moment of rage. I waited until I was calm, surgical, because sloppy revenge is just more pain. One rainy Tuesday, after she left for work hugging her coat, like any other day, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and opened the folder I'd built in the dark months before. Screenshots, hotel timestamps, bank transfers, selfie photos, every humiliating piece, filed, labeled, and timestamped. I converted a few into PDFs and wrote a short, anonymous note. Company HR, I'm reporting a supervisor for a relationship with a subordinate. Evidence attached, no flourish. No threats, just facts that couldn't be gaslit away. I hit send and felt an odd calm settle over me, like the eye of a storm. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was walking on the edge of my sanity. I felt purposeful. I expected nothing immediate. Companies move slow, people gossip slower. But that afternoon, the apartment hummed different. Her texts became clipped. She started checking her phone in the middle of lunch. I watched her from the doorway as she paced. The always-present perfume now sharp in the air, like an accusation. By evening, whispers began. A message from a coworker she'd thought was friendlier than it should be. You okay? Did you hear about HR? Her face drained when she read it. She slammed her bag down, eyes wild, and demanded, who did you talk to? Who sent something to HR? I kept my expression blank calm, tired because I'd rehearsed this. "What are you on about?" I said, slow. She ripped open her laptop and scrolled frantically, her fingers shaking. The sound of the keys was like a metronome, counting down my old life. She finally looked up, breathless, and the words she spat at me were the most human thing I'd heard from her in months. "You went behind my back. You ruined me. But the thing about truth is, it doesn't ask permission to hurt." And I knew the worst part was just starting. The storm finally broke one evening when she came home in a fury. I was chopping vegetables in the kitchen when the door slammed hard enough to rattle the frame. She stormed in, her heels clicking like gunshots across the floor, and threw her bag onto the couch. "They suspended him," she shouted, her voice shaking. "Do you have any idea what this means for me?" I wiped my hands on a towel and looked at her. Calm, colder than I'd ever been. "Why don't you explain it to me?" She spun around, her face red, eyes wild. "Don T, play dumb. HR knows everything. Someone sent them proof. This is going to ruin us." Us. That word almost made me laugh. For months, there had been no us. Just me funding her lifestyle while she lived a secret one with him. So I walked closer, slow and deliberate, until I was standing inches from her. "I know everything," I said quietly. "The texts, the hotels, every late night you swore was for work." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She stumbled back like I'd struck her. You did this." I nodded. "I paid your bills while you laughed in my face. You gaslit me. You made me think I was crazy. And all the while, you thought you'd never get caught." Her lip trembled. The tears finally came, the ones I thought I wanted months ago. "But they didn't move me now, please," she whispered. "We can fix this." I shook my head. "No, you broke everything. Now you get to live with the pieces." For the first time, I saw her mask shatter. The confident, smug version of her disappeared, replaced by a woman terrified of the consequences she thought she'd never face, and I knew this was just the beginning of her downfall. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I didn't even let my voice rise above a whisper. I just looked at her, this woman I once thought I'd spend forever with, and felt the last of my love dissolve into nothing. "Pack your things," I said flatly. "You're leaving tonight." Her eyes widened like I'd slapped her. "Wait. No, please, you can't just." She reached for my arm, but I pulled back. The same hands that once begged me for rent money were now trembling as she realized the gravy train was over. I walked to the door and held it open. "I paid your bills. I fed you. I covered every expense while you cheated on me. You don't get to stay here another second." She collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. "I'll change. I swear. I'll cut him off. I'll do anything." I shook my head. "You already did everything. You chose him over and over again. Now you can live with the fallout." The silence between us was suffocating. The only sound was the faint buzz of her phone on the coffee table. Probably another message from him. I picked it up, glanced at the notification, and tossed it into her lap. "Text him. Maybe he'll let you crash at his place." "Oh, what, she's married, isn't he?" Her face crumpled, tears streaming, but I felt nothing. Not rage, not grief, just a strange, freeing emptiness. She begged one last time as she stuffed clothes into a bag, but I didn't respond. I stood there, steady, until the door finally shut behind her, and in that moment, the apartment felt lighter. For the first time in months, I could actually breathe. But her nightmare, that was only beginning. The days after she left were eerily quiet. No perfume lingering in the air, no late-night phone buzzes, no fake kisses before bed, just silence. And for once, silence felt like peace. At first, I kept waiting for the guilt to hit me, for some crushing loneliness to make me regret everything, but it never came. Instead, every morning I woke up a little lighter, a little freer. I started cooking for myself again, hitting the gym, even reconnecting with friends I'd shut out. The person she'd broken down piece by piece was slowly coming back, and then the updates started rolling in. A buddy from her company texted me, "Dude, you won't believe this. He's gone, fired." HR took everything seriously, and she's done too. Words everywhere. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Weeks later, I overheard someone at a coffee shop whispering about that girl who slept with her boss and tanked her career. They didn't even know I was sitting 3 tables away, sipping my drink in silence. Her reputation wasn't just bruised, it was scorched earth. I should have felt petty satisfaction, but what I really felt was closure. She had burned my trust, drained my soul, and mocked my loyalty. And now, the mask she wore for everyone else had finally melted. People were seeing her for who she really was. As for me, it wasn't just surviving, I was rebuilding. I'd started therapy, focusing on my career, and pouring energy back into myself instead of someone unworthy of it. For the first time in years, I wasn't living for someone else's comfort. I was living for me. Looking back, I don't regret what I did. I gave her my love, my money, my loyalty. She gave me betrayal. But in the end, I gave her something she couldn't escape consequences, and I walked away with something she'll never have again: my freedom, myself.